Time now for Marriage Builders, building marriages to last a lifetime. Also online at marriagebuilders.com. Now, here's Joyce Harley and Dr. Bill Harley.
Welcome to Marriage Builders Radio. So glad you could join us for this hour of talking about how to have and keep a good marriage and answering your marriage questions. And joining us now for this discussion is my husband, Dr. Bill Harley, licensed clinical psychologist and best-selling author on marriage. Well, we have an email that has come our way where the emailer wants to learn to speak up more in the marriage. Okay? So I thought just general conversation at the top of the show, let's talk about the importance of sharing our concerns with our spouse and maybe what is the best way to do it and what is the wrong way to do it.
Well, it's all about the topic of communication. Communication, conversation is important in marriage, but communication is actually a issue that comes up probably more than conversation itself, and that is, are we hearing each other? Are we understanding each other? When I tell you about a problem that I have, do I feel that you are listening? Do I feel that you have an empathetic ear? You're trying to understand me, and the same thing vice versa. And that's what we consider to be communication. In other words, are we expressing ourselves accurately, and are we receiving it empathetically?
All right, now that's communication. Well, because I'm thinking this isn't what I was asking about. I'm thinking, okay, you're going to get there. Okay, so you're saying that you're talking about the idea of listening, but he's wanting to know how to voice his opinions and feel free to bring it up.
Well, yeah.
Is it because he's not being received well by his spouse?
Right. I would assume that first of all, the goal of accurate and empathetic communication is extremely important in marriage. That if you tell me about a concern that you have, that I would listen with interest and drop what I'm doing. In other words, you say, Bill, there's something I really need to talk to you about. Okay. And I still am looking at my cell phone.
Yeah, right.
That would bother you.
Yes, it would. Yeah, exactly.
Why? Because I'm not giving you the attention that you need. And so the basic idea is that when you have something to tell me, I generally will drop what I'm doing.
So the idea that the way it's being received gives me the freedom to be open and honest with you because of how you will receive it.
There is no risk of either me getting upset with you or me telling you that I don't have time to listen right now.
Okay, and so if you did not... if you did get upset with me or you didn't have time to listen to me, then that would probably curtail my willingness to share with you my complaints.
Right.
And that's exactly what Jeff is going through then.
And don't you think that would be true?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
No, don't you think that? Yeah. So basically, if you tell me about a problem and then right away my reaction is defensive, look, I got problems too. You're not the only one with problems around here.
Whoa. I wouldn't want to hear that.
No.
Yeah, that's for sure. But what I'd like to hit upon, though, is we talk about openness and honesty. Mm-hmm. And that's the beginning of being open and honest, beginning to share, to speak up about problems you might be having personally or about the relationship, whatever. The idea is having the freedom, though, and I think freedom is the word I want. I feel so comfortable with our relationship that I feel free to express these things. And I think Jeff is saying he doesn't have the comfort.
Right.
And so he doesn't speak up. But it's important. It's important that it be received right so he has the freedom to do it. But should it curtail him from speaking up in the first place? That's the question.
Well, there are some people who just don't like revealing their inner feelings to other people, not because the other person's not going to be empathetic, but because They just don't want to be that exposed.
But do you encourage them to go with that feeling? Or do you say, no, it's important that you express how you feel?
Right. Well, you and I both maintain the position that honesty and openness should be radical. In other words, that you should reveal all of your feelings and your history and your present activities and your plans for the future. I mean, these are things that are important to be revealed because marriage is a partnership and both spouses need to be on the same page regarding the decisions that they make throughout the day.
Well, this is, I think, Jeff's problem, is that they're not on the same page, probably. Mm-hmm. So let's read what he has to say here. He says, I have a chronic fear of confrontation. When there is an injustice against me or I disagree with something, I generally just accommodate or let it pass because I feel it is just easier than to argue about something that I feel is not that important. I always have been rather shy and insecure. Now that I'm married, I have come to the realization that I should avoid this behavior with my spouse. Okay, now what behavior is he avoiding here?
Well, basically, he doesn't like to deal with conflict. And so,
but he realizes he should be bringing things up with his spouse.
Right. Okay. So this is his basic nature, to be avoidant. He avoids issues. He avoids problems.
He lets it pass.
And then now that he's married, he can see that that's not working out too well as a marital strategy.
And he says that because he says it has led to resentment on my side. And the problem is not resolved, and the resentment just continues to build up.
Right.
Since I've been accommodating my spouse, I feel I have not had my needs met, which would be my fault as well because I haven't told her what my needs are. How can I learn not to fear confrontation and start speaking up and communicating better? I fear I can become too confrontational. As a matter of fact, since I have been doing a conscious effort to speak up when I disagree or when something doesn't work for me, my wife feels I am now arguing about everything and trying to change her. Thank you for your advice. That's interesting. So he hasn't been, in quotes, confrontational. We don't like the word confronting because that seems negative. We want you to speak up, share your concerns. All your fingers are pointed at you, yourself, how I feel. Okay, now he's starting to do that. And now his wife is disagreeing with him. And they're starting to have arguments because he is speaking up. So he's kind of between a rock and a hard place. He wants to do more of this because he's become resentful when he hasn't been doing it. And yet it's not being received well. Do I have that right?
Yeah. And what you have is first of all, there's a personality characteristic that he's got where basically he is probably fearful of confrontation. He just doesn't like to do it.
And that's what he said.
There might be an introversion issue here as well. Introverted people generally can't think of the words that they want to say that would express how they really feel. And so an introverted person has a little trouble getting off on the topic and then saying exactly what they mean to say. So the risk is to blurt out something where it hasn't really been carefully thought through, or the words are not exactly expressing what they feel. And
if they're interrupted, they lose their train of thought.
And basically they're not good at arguing because they become belligerent instead of being more thoughtful, more empathetic. They lack the words to soften what they have to say. They're not really good at this sort of thing, but they can be good. They can be good at it. I mean, you can learn, introverted people can learn how to express their feelings, especially in marriage, in a way that doesn't sound abrupt and confrontational. And this is something that he needs to do, and in the next segment we'll give him some pointers as to how to do
Okay, because here's his question. How can I learn not to fear confrontation and start speaking up and communicating better? And we will definitely get into that for Jeff on the other side, and for you as well, because I'm sure you're going to benefit from this conversation. And we'll be back with more Marriage Builders Radio. Join the thousands of couples who have learned step by step how to experience a meaningful and fulfilling love relationship. They did this by completing Dr. Harley's online seminar and home study courses, His Needs, Her Needs, and Love Busters. Here's how it works. You'll begin by watching an online seminar where Dr. Harley will help you identify the problems you face in your marriage. Then, the home study courses will show you how to solve those marital problems in a systematic way. Go to marriagebuilders.com homepage and click the tab Courses, Seminar, and Accountability. Look for program number 2 for a description of the seminar and the courses. Then follow the instructions on that page to place your order. Start the program the day the package arrives. And if you're not completely satisfied, send it back to us within 30 days, and you'll receive a full refund, including shipping charges. Restore passion to your marriage. Order today. You have nothing to lose and everything to gain. Welcome back to Marriage Builders Radio. Well, Jeff has emailed us his concerns, and his question is, how can I learn not to fear confrontation, which he says he's had a chronic fear of confrontation, probably most of his life, and now he's married, and he realizes that he needs to communicate his perspectives as well. So how can I not fear confrontation and start speaking up and communicating better? Because right now, they are developing into arguments, and his wife thinks he's trying to change her.
Well, he probably is, actually, and it could very well be that in the beginning of their relationship, he was very accommodating. He would do just about anything she wanted him to do. He didn't ever get the feeling that what he wanted, or what she wanted was anything that he didn't already want to do. Turns out. Yeah,
that's right. If you don't say anything, how would you know?
Turns out there were things that were bothering him, but he never mentioned it. Mm-hmm. So she goes into the relationship feeling like I'm the perfect person for this guy because he doesn't seem to be concerned about anything I do. So he's accepting me for who I am. We talked earlier about the freeloader. The freeloader is a person who wants to be accepted for exactly who they are, and they don't want to have to change to accommodate anybody. All right, and a freeloader is a attitude. It's not a fixed position. So you can change. You can become something else. You can become a buyer. Which is what we recommend. But the basic idea is that at this point in time, his wife says, "You thought I was fine the way I was before. Why are you bringing these things up now?" Now, I've had a little experience with this because when we were dating, you never criticized me. I cannot remember a single incident. I remember we went shopping once, and you were a little bit concerned about the shirts that I picked out.
Yes, right.
but not to a degree.
No, that was not insulting. No, it was just, oh, really? You like that
right?
one?
Right, yeah, so you were just loving and accepting, and I could have easily come to the conclusion that you loved me for who I was, and I wouldn't have to change. But then after we were married, then I discovered that there were things about me that needed to change in order for you to feel more comfortable.
But may I add that I did break up with you. Now, we're teens, right, folks, when we're talking about this segment of our life. And when I did maybe think of more negative things, that's when I broke up with you.
Yeah, you just break
up.
I
would just
never
break up.
Communicated anything.
However, after marriage, I realized you don't break up, you communicate then, right?
Right.
So that's what I did.
So you would have broken up otherwise, right?
Perhaps. Yeah, no, not to that extent. No,
well,
I was sold on you at that point, so I would not have broken up with you. But I did want to express, because I thought we have the rest of our life together. Sure. And so I need to let you know how I feel about this, and I wanted you to do the same for me.
So there were two things that had to be done here. Number one is that you had to express your concerns in a way that I understood that you cared about me. And I think that this is a very important lesson for Jeff. In other words, that when he's talking about things that his wife is doing that bothers him or is not doing that he would like her to do, he needs to be able to express it in the context of care. I care a great deal about you. I think you mean a great deal to me. I'll always be there for you when you need me. And in other words, that the conversation itself expresses the care that he has for her, even though he is asking for some kind of change. So in other words, he's asking for a change, but it's with a backdrop of I care a great deal about you.
Okay, now I'm making up this illustration. I have no idea what Jeff is referring to or what their conversations are about. But I always like to have an illustration because it helps people relate more to the concept that you're laying out here. In other words, you need to express your concerns in a way that shows that you care. Okay, that's the basis of what you just said, correct?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So let's just say he knows about marriage builders, and he thinks that the questionnaires are a great idea. And so now he's speaking up in the marriage, and he's saying, why don't we fill out this emotional needs questionnaire? So why don't you give us an illustration on how he could be expressing concerns regarding the need to fill out the emotional needs questionnaire in a way that shows care for her, his wife?
Yeah, what he could do is offer initially to have her fill out the questionnaire so that he could be a better husband. He could say, I want to be everything you need in a husband. And here's a questionnaire that may help you communicate with me your concerns about me.
Okay.
Now, she might be, her antenna might go up and say, are you going to be asking me to fill out the same questionnaire? Because
no, are you going to? Am I going to have to ask you to fill out the same questionnaire? Because she's filling it out her needs, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. Okay. Because you're wanting to tell me that there are things that need to be changed. It's hard to get past the issue of I thought you loved me for who I was and I didn't need to change. It's going to be hard to get past that issue because up to this point he has not ever told her that there's anything about her that bothers him. Now he's having to reveal that in order to have a marriage, you see. And so, but he needs to be able to express it in the form of his care for her. Now, care, from my perspective, is a willingness to change. That works side by side. In other words, I care about you, and what that means is that I'm willing to learn how to meet your emotional needs. I'm willing to learn how to stop doing things that hurt you, and I'm willing to learn how to make decisions taking your feelings into account, which is change on my part. So it's very hard to imagine an example of care that doesn't involve change. Basically, what you're doing is you're looking at the person and saying, I want to be that person who can accommodate your needs, and by doing and that will require change on my part. So first of all, I think that he needs to be able to communicate care, which means he doesn't get angry with her when they're having a discussion. He doesn't get demanding. He doesn't show any disrespect. In his conversation, she always knows that he's caring about her, he's thinking about her, he's concerned about her reactions.
What must he be doing right now for her to feel that he says, my wife feels I am now arguing about everything and try to change her. What can you understand he might be doing that gives her that impression?
Well, it could very well be that in his communication, he could be saying, I don't think you care about me, which would be a big mistake for him to say that. Because what it would do is it would be argumentative, it would be confrontational. What he needs to be able
indicating that she needs to change.
Well, and I think it's one thing to say that she needs to that he would like to spend more time with her. It bothers him to have her she's on the phone all night talking to her girlfriends and he's not with her. He would like her to spend more time talking to her instead of his girlfriends. That should not express a lack of care for him toward her.
I think I understand. It's break time. We'll be back with more. Join the thousands of couples who have learned step by step how to experience a meaningful and fulfilling love relationship. They did this by completing Dr. Harley's online seminar and home study courses, His Needs, Her Needs, and Love Busters. Here's how it works. You'll begin by watching an online seminar where Dr. Harley will help you identify the problems you face in your marriage. Then, the home study courses will show you how to solve those marital problems in a systematic way. Go to marriagebuilders.com homepage and click the tab Courses, Seminar, and Accountability. Look for program number 2 for a description of the seminar and the courses. Then follow the instructions on that page to place your order. Start the program the day the package arrives. And if you're not completely satisfied, send it back to us within 30 days, and you'll receive a full refund, including shipping charges. Restore passion to your marriage. Order today. You have nothing to lose and everything to gain. Welcome back to Marriage Builders Radio. I think it ended kind of weak on the last one there, as you heard me say, okay.
Okay, I get it. I don't really get it.
Well, we were having problems with the his and the hers and all that, keeping that straight. But, okay, to wrap things up for Jeff then, a tidy little package. How can I learn not to fear confrontation and start speaking up and communicating better?
Yeah, and I think my general reaction is that there are 2 issues here that need to be dealt with. Number 1 is that he needs to make his conversation with her reflect his care for her. I call that making the conversation pleasant and safe. Okay? Pleasant and safe. That she has nothing to fear from him.
And nothing would cause an argument.
Right. You know, if he's presenting a problem that he has that he would like to see change in her, which is not all conflicts require change, but most, if many, do. In other words, if you and I have a conflict, generally it's about something that one of us wants to do that the other one doesn't want them to do it. And so that has to be resolved.
It could be looked at as trying to change me, though. I mean, you know, trying to convince me to change my thoughts about something.
Right.
So that could also go into that category of you trying to change me.
So that's the one thing. Make sure that the conversation is always safe and pleasant from his perspective. From him, it's always safe and pleasant for her. She might not make it safe and pleasant for him. Matter of fact, he brings up this conflict, and she right away gets angry with him about the conflict itself.
But it takes 2 to argue.
That may be what's going on. Now, what he
can
do... But he can
leave the scene and say, we'll talk about this later.
Right. Now, he might see that as a going back to his lack of ability to confront issues, but at the same time, I would argue that there's no point in discussing this any further if the conversation is not pleasant and safe.
I can understand that.
See, so the thought is, well, the smart thing to do if you have a conflict and the other person is upset is to have the conversation later. And that's not a weak position to take. That's a smart position to take.
The word confrontation to me seems pretty strong. It reminds me of in your face. You know, I'm confronting, and that's usually very bold and directive.
Right.
And so I would learn to not to fear. I love another word there other than confrontation. How can I learn not to fear bringing up issues of concern, bringing up problems, and start speaking up and communicating better? But the word confrontation in itself, I think, is a problem. We never talk about confronting your spouse about something. We talk about addressing. We talk about discussing, bringing up the issue to let them be aware that it's bothering you. But we don't talk confrontation. You see what I'm getting at here?
Yeah, right. It's in other words, it's a negotiation is really what it is. It's thinking about, okay, here's my problem. How could this be solved in a way that would make both of us happy? I've written an article called, I how to resolve a conflict when no one wants to address the issue. And we might want to read that. It's in the articles section. And I have a letter that I propose that he write to her, saying that it's difficult for me to bring these subjects up in a verbal way. So let me just explain to you what I'm up against here and how we might be able to resolve this. I'm a big advocate for many couples to do this through email. Because then you don't have the same kind of emotional reaction that can take place where a person's feelings are hurt, and then they either won't talk to each other or they yell and scream and holler. Email can sometimes be more tactful, and you can say it the way you want to say it. So,
what is the name of the article again that you wrote?
How to resolve problems when no one wants to raise the issue.
That's a real catchy title.
I know all my titles are that way.
It's a long sentence. How to resolve problems when no one wants to raise the issue. Mm-hmm. Okay? Very good. I wrote it down so others can write it down as well. Okay, that's a good one for him to refer to.
Just go into the article section.
Very good. Well, Jeff, thank you. Good conversation based on your question. And I trust this has helped you, but I know you'll get back to us if it didn't. And I trust it's helped others listening as well. When you are also been a little concerned about how to bring up conflict. I think that's the synonym I was looking for. Instead of confrontation, I don't want to fear bringing up conflicts. Mm-hmm. That's what we encourage,
right,
to talk about conflicts. Okay. How to resolve a problem when no one wants to talk about it. That's the article you want to reference.
No one wants to bring up the issue. Raise the issue.
We got to work on shortening that title. I can't remember it. Mm-hmm. Okay, we're going to go in now and remind you that if you want to email us, the address is mbradio@marriagebuilders.com. And David is writing us about negativity hurting marriage. We'll have time just to lay this down, then we'll come back and discuss it. He says, so I'm having a difficult time making amends with my wife. She brings out all the hurt from the past and almost likes to stay in that funk, making me anxious and stressed out all the time. I'm practicing Marriage Builder's plan to help meet her emotional needs, yet she seems to have made judgment on who I am as a person and tries to always belittle my efforts. I keep telling her to be positive and focus on good things that we have planned or achieving, yet she says that she no longer feels like pursuing happiness, and her focus is only on our son. How do I get her to drop the negative interactions and make her livelier about life and start enjoying our time together?
Yeah, actually, I'll talk about the general issue that he raises, and then I'll talk about his specific problem, okay? So the general issue is one of trying to be positive when your spouse is always negative. And as a psychologist, my reaction would be that you're talking about depression here. The spouse is depressed. And knowing his situation, I would concur with that. I think she is depressed. But there is another issue that I'll talk about in the next segment.
And that would explain she no longer feels like pursuing happiness.
Yes.
That's another way of saying I'm depressed.
I'm very depressed.
And nothing's
going to make me happy.
Yeah, like it could help.
That's depression.
All right. And we'll get to the other topic that you're going to bring up on the other side for David. Stay with us for more Marriage Builders Radio. Would you like your spouse to hear what you just heard on Marriage Builders Radio? Or would you like to hear past broadcasts on topics of special interest to you? We are now offering unlimited downloads of over 5,000 Marriage Builders Radio segments that you can listen to as often as you like. All advertisements and musical spacing has been eliminated, so you hear only the segment itself. There are 3 ways to find the segments you want to hear. They're identified by the original date of the broadcast, by the primary topic of discussion, and by a brief description of the segment, including the caller's question. By using our search engine, you can identify segments that are of interest to you. Unlimited downloads of over 5,000 Marriage Builders Radio segments. Take advantage of this offering. To download Marriage Builders segments of your choice, go to Radio Archives on the marriagebuilders.com website, and everything will be explained to you. That's radio archives at marriagebuilders.com. We're so glad you've joined us for this hour of Marriage Builders Radio. Well, we started answering David's email regarding negativity hurting his marriage. And we assessed that his wife, who says she no longer feels like pursuing happiness and she focuses only on their son, is obviously in a depressed state at this point.
Right.
So, but he is trying his best to meet her emotional needs, and often she belittles his efforts. So this has to be very discouraging for David.
Yes, it is, and I would say that if somebody I didn't know anything about were to write me a question like this, I would say that there's something going on in her life that has been terribly disappointing, and it probably has something to do with him. And so no matter what his efforts are to cheer her up, she's going to be concerned about how there is no solution for her, that she's going to feel hopeless about this. Now, I know something about their situation, and I know for a fact that that is what's happening. So in the one case, I'd be speculating. In this particular case, I could say I know with certainty what a problem is. The problem is that she has not yet come to grips with a problem that they've had in their past. And she is holding a grudge against him and she won't be happy so that he won't be happy. I mean, there are a lot of people that are like that.
Yeah.
Basically, I'm not going to reward you by being a cheerful person so that you can be happy. I want you to let me know. I want to let you know how unhappy I am.
Well, do you encourage
so that you can be punished?
Do you encourage David then to continue on with these efforts?
Well,
or is it going to be a wasted effort on his part?
Knowing his situation, he wants to save his marriage at all costs.
He's determined.
He is determined, and she's not going anywhere. She's not going to divorce him. And so the question is, are you going to just stay miserable for the rest of your lives together? And I would encourage her to see a psychologist like me, and I would like to interact with her if she'd be willing, because I would like to give her a way out. How can you get out of this situation being a happy wife to David, so that you and David can enjoy your lives together? How can you do that under these conditions? And I think what she needs is probably somebody outside of their marriage to give her perspective on what she's up against here.
Would you say that, aside from their extenuating issues, if one spouse is trying to meet the emotional needs of the other spouse, isn't it usually received well? Not in a belittling fashion.
Not if you're in withdrawal.
Okay, explain that.
See, so she is in the state of withdrawal right now, where the state of withdrawal is a state of mind where you have decided that there's really no hope for the relationship. You don't want to meet your spouse's emotional needs. You don't want your spouse to meet your emotional needs. And what you are in is in a state of emotional divorce. I don't want to be a part of your life, and I don't want you to be a part of my life. So he tries to date her. He tries to make her happy. He tries to tell jokes. She's not going to be at all responsive, and she's just going to make fun of him.
So how do you turn that around?
Well, there's an argument that could be made that maybe he could turn it around by just being kind and considerate and
continuing on meeting her needs.
But at the same time, she could be so resentful toward him about what happened in their past that she's just not going to let go.
Okay, now, once again, let's put them aside. I'm just talking general public. If one spouse is making every effort to meet the needs of the other spouse, isn't that usually received well? And doesn't that begin to make change in the marriage?
Generally speaking, it isn't so much the meeting of the needs, because when a person's in withdrawal, they're not going to let you meet their needs.
But let's say they're not in withdrawal.
No, you have to be talking about a person in withdrawal here.
Okay, in this situation, but can we step away from this situation?
Not really, because that's a crucial element of this. And what would explain her behavior?
Okay, I want you to...
She's in withdrawal.
Okay, I understand that. Now we're going to leave Jeff aside, okay? Yep. And we have listeners out there saying, I'm going to start meeting my spouse's needs. We're going to fill out that questionnaire, and I'm going to be the best need meter ever.
Okay, here would be my...
Isn't the response going to be positive on their spouse's side?
Not if they're in withdrawal.
Okay,
but if they're not,
point. But if they're not in withdrawal,
right,
then it will be positive.
Respond. Right.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Okay, so the basic argument that I have right now is that if they are in withdrawal, there is something you can do, and the answer is not engage in love busters. Because it's love busters that gets them into withdrawal. It's not the failure to meet emotional needs that drives a person into withdrawal. It's love busters. And I use the snail example from my childhood. You poke the head of the snail, goes back in the shell. And if you keep doing that, it takes longer and longer for the person to come out, the snail to come out of the shell. Well, this is the way people are. And if he were to just stop doing anything to hurt her, and knowing their situation, in their situation, I don't know how he can do that, quite frankly. But in many situations, you can actually stop doing things that are upsetting the other person, and then they'll come out of their shell, and they will go into the state of conflict. So as soon as she comes out of the shell, she starts arguing with him all the time, then at that point, you don't argue back. You don't argue back. You try to listen. You try to understand what's causing her to be so negative about everything. And then you try to address that in a loving and caring way. Then, you see, then she starts to recognize that maybe there is some hope in the relationship after all. And then you're okay. So in this situation, though, I'd really like to be able to communicate with his wife. I'd like to be able to talk with her and try to help her see a way out of the situation she is in a way that keeps her married to this guy. Mm-hmm. Because I think he's good for her. And so it's a matter of working with her. In general, I would say, if your spouse is just, if you're trying to cheer your spouse up and your spouse just tells you all the time that you're just being stupid, your spouse is depressed and probably needs professional help.
And, of course, professional help, then we would talk about medication, and
yes,
it does turn things around,
yep.
And often it's short-term.
Yep.
It doesn't necessarily have to be long-term medication. But lifestyle also implicates into depression, right?
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, the depression is a very complicated thing. The question is, what conditions have to exist before you'll feel hopeful about things? And that's the job of a psychologist in working with a person who's depressed.
Well,
Figure that out.
David, there's the invite that Dr. Harley would love to communicate with your wife, and let's see if we can't work this out. Well, it's time for a break, but we're going to have more to talk about on the other side. Just a reminder, you have a question, you have a comment, you have a reaction to something you've just heard on the show, remember to communicate with us. mbradio@marriagebuilders.com. We're here to be addressing your questions. We'll be back with more Marriage Builders Radio. Have you been to the forum? The MarriageBuilders.com forum? It's a community where people come with their marriage problems and receive direction, support, and encouragement from those who have solved those problems in their own marriages. They did this by using Dr. Harley's Marriage Builders concepts. You can view the daily interaction without registering, but to join in the discussion, you need to register. If you have any questions about registering or anything else about the forum, the administrator will help you by email. Your identity is kept completely confidential, and there's no charge. Just about every marital problem imaginable has been addressed on the forum. So don't hesitate to describe your problem to those who can help. Whether your problems are simple or complicated, new, or have been going on for years, the Marriage Builders Forum can help you find solutions. Are you looking for direction, support, and encouragement in your marriage? Check out the Marriage Builders Forum. So glad you've joined us for this hour of Marriage Builders Radio. Our topic right now is going to be overall the umbrella theme, blaming the past for issues of the present. All right? And this is from Kate. And the issue from the past is childhood trauma that she has brought up. Mm-hmm. And she's had 2 cases that have come to her church. And her bottom line question was wanting to help others who come to their church dealing with childhood trauma. Okay? Mm-hmm. And she wrote us and she said, she begins with her email saying, "We have ordered the Marriage Builders online course because we appreciated the fact that you, Dr. Harley, focus on helping couples work through their current problems without blaming the past." Mm-hmm. And then she gives us 2 illustrations where lives are being affected dramatically in the present because they are being instructed to consider the past.
Yes.
And talk to us first, though, about your general premise that current problems are to be dealt with and not be blamed on anything in the past.
Yeah, it's very common in marriage circles, marriage therapy circles, to believe that in order to help a marriage, you have to understand the family background of each spouse. Having actually taken classes in this therapeutic approach and having actually tried using it myself, I have come to the conclusion that it's a total waste of time, if not actually damaging to the therapeutic process. And the reason I say that is because a lot of times people don't have the time and money to go into this background before addressing the problem of the present. Most marriage therapy lasts maybe 6 sessions. Well, you can't do that. You cannot go into a person's background and understand the background clearly and then launch forward in a solution of the problem in those 6 sessions. So in the approach that I took, basically I would say, I've identified your problem. Here are the solutions to the problem. I will give you a little bit of a head start. We'll work together to solve this. And then I want you to be on your own and contact me if you run into any trouble. And so basically it would be a linear solution to the marital problem. Turned out to be very successful. And of course, a lot of it had to do with reading books I've written and attending seminars and that kind of thing. But the basic idea was that I never dealt with the past. Never.
You acknowledged it.
I acknowledged it.
Right.
It would tell me I'd be polite. I'd listen to whatever their problem was in the past. But I would say the problem that you have now in the present requires change. And I'm going to explain to you what kind of change you're going to have in order to solve the problem. And here's how you go about doing that.
I would think that people would find that refreshing. In other words, I don't even want to think about that again.
Right.
And yet, so often the counseling takes them through all of that garbage again.
Yes.
And what you relive becomes your present. What you relive in the past becomes your present.
Yes.
And that is difficult. Yes. Well, here's what Kate gives us as an illustration. And I thought our listeners should hear about this. The counseling my brother and his wife received blamed an affair on one childhood incident with her brother. The counselor said the 4-year-old in her caused, so it was an incident she had with her brother when she was 4 years old, right? Mm-hmm. So this is Kate's sister-in-law who has gone through this. She had an incident with her brother, and it had a sexual nature. The counselor said that the 4-year-old in her, who is now an adult woman, caused her to make each decision she made over a 4 to 5 week span and caused her to keep the affair a secret for 2 years. So Kate's sister-in-law had an affair. And because of what happened to her as a child, she didn't relate the fact that she had an affair to her husband.
Yeah. The person having an affair would love to hear that explanation.
Well, she goes on to say it caused greater anger and mistrust on my brother's part.
Absolutely.
Because now how soon, he's asking, was the 4-year-old and his wife liable to cause her to stray again?
Right. Yeah. Where's this 4-year-old going to keep popping up all the time?
She said this approach was confusing even for my sister-in-law.
Yeah, and this is what I was saying earlier about the damaging. That I don't think all approaches to therapy are
equal.
are either positive or neutral. I think many of them can be damaging.
Oh, that's interesting.
You can hurt the cause by having a particular approach to the problem, and this is a great example. I think that as soon as you give an unfaithful spouse some kind of an excuse for what they've done, they're just going to be off and running with it, and you're not going to be able to get them to see how they're going to have to make changes in their life. They're going to have to take extraordinary precautions to make sure that they don't have another affair. Not because of what happened when they were 4 years old, but because we're all wired to have affairs. And that she needs to understand, this counselor needs to understand that this particular incident that happened in the childhood has almost nothing to do with the fact that she had an affair. Now, my argument is you can't prove that one way or another. You can't prove it. But if I were to help that woman not only get through this affair, but also have a great marriage and never have an affair again without addressing the 4-year-old within her, that to me would be somewhat evidence that you don't need to talk about the 4-year-old within you to get through your problems in life. So in general, I would say that as soon as you say that my childhood is responsible for the problems that I have in life, you're not addressing the fact that you can change. You can be different today. In other words, whatever we went through as a child, you can overcome that by changing your behavior in the present, not by having 100 hours of therapy talking about that horrible experience again and again.
Now, Kate is writing, she said, so this woman who came to her, actually a couple have come to her, wonder why their church ministry is not equipped to help people deal with these kinds of issues. And then Kate wrote, and this is often because we don't understand, we didn't experience what they experienced. And I had a chance to talk to Kate, and I said, experience has nothing to do with it as far as helping somebody in these situations.
Yeah, neither you nor I are alcoholics, but I wasn't a trainer. I train people in chemical dependency counseling. I actually ran 10 treatment programs. I'm a pretty good chemical dependency counselor, never having been an alcoholic or addicted to drugs.
And we have not had infidelity in our marriage.
And yet that's
you
what
wrote
we
the
spend
book
a lot of our
Surviving
time.
an Affair.
Right,
exactly, right. So experience is not necessary to be helping people.
Yeah.
Now, though, this is an interesting issue, though, in organizations, in churches, whatever. They want to help people. Mm-hmm. So she says, so where do we turn to help us understand how to help people deal with childhood trauma? She also says, what resources would you recommend, or do you have an answer for us?
Yeah, the answer is you don't have to deal with those issues. Now, that is very controversial. There are a lot of people that would just howl at the suggestion that you don't have to deal with childhood problems.
But see, I look at dealing with it like this. I'm sorry you went through that. And I'm sorry you even had to reiterate that to me. But let's move on. And let's see how, if it's affected you, how you can overcome that affectation. And let's work out a plan for you from this day forward.
Yeah. See, when I see a person, I do a thorough analysis of their personality, of their predispositions, of their problems that they've had in life, and so forth and so on. And then I take them at the present. You're in the present. Tell me the problem that you face right now. What is your problem? And then I offer a solution to the problem. I am what's known as a directive therapist. I offer a direction to the solution. There are a lot of colleges and universities that train people to resist that at all costs. Don't tell people what to do. Instead, you listen, and they will find the solution from within themselves. That's often the approach that people will take that go into a person's childhood. That if you go back into the background of the child, you will eventually come to grips with the issue, solve the problem within your own psyche, and so forth. To me, it's a gigantic waste of time. And psychoanalysis, of course, was very famous in thinking that might be a good idea. We almost never hear of it anymore. Why? Because it's been proven over and over again to be ineffective. So the basic feeling that I've got is that we've got effective ways of dealing with people's problems today. Clinical psychologists are pretty good at what they do, but they don't necessarily go back into a person's childhood to solve the problem.
Do you like the phrase acknowledge and move on? I mean, acknowledge, learn from, and move on. In essence, that's what you're saying, that you acknowledge something happened. It could be in the marriage, it could be in your childhood, whatever. But let's not dwell on why it happened, how many times it happened. Mm-hmm. Let's acknowledge it in a nutshell,
right,
and then move on to how we can solve the problem. I'm thinking if we had an infested tree in the back with worms or something that was destroying it, I would not want the tree person to come and talk to me about how those worms got there, what they're doing there, what it's doing to the tree. I'm calling you to say, how can I get rid of this worm-infested tree? And I want to get on with my life and not see worms crawling on my tree.
Right.
You see my point?
Mm-hmm.
It feels to me like a cleaner way of attacking problems from the past.
Well, there are so many advantages to the way I do things because it is not only economic, but it is also effective.
Efficient.
And so if you can solve a problem without going to all that trouble, why not?
Very good. Well, Kate, we want to thank you for bringing this issue up, and we wish you all the best in your ministry, in your church. And if we can be of any help, you let us know. It's break time. When we come back, we're going to be wrapping things up on today's Marriage Builders Radio. Have you been to marriagebuilders.com yet? Its purpose is to help you resolve your marital conflicts in a way that creates romantic love. If you both follow the advice this website provides, you'll solve your problems and be in love with each other in no time. If you're new to marriagebuilders.com, before you read anything else, you should take the tour. Click Site Tour on the home page, and you'll have a complete overview in a matter of minutes. Then go to Basic Concepts. That's because they provide the logical basis for all Dr. Harley's solutions to marital problems, and it's completely free of charge. If you only have a few minutes and you want a quick overview, read the first topic in that section called A Summary of Dr. Harley's Basic Concepts. Take in Dr. Harley's articles and Q&A columns, interact with others on the forum, and learn to become an expert in making your marriage the best it can be. That's marriagebuilders.com. Welcome back to Marriage Builders Radio. We're in our final moments together, but wait, there's time to answer one more question that you have sent our way via mbradio@marriagebuilders.com. I didn't mention that. In your email to us, if you'd like to consider joining us as a caller, include your phone number. I will contact you off air, explain how it works, and then you can decide. Also include your mailing address, because once we've discussed your email, typically you'll hear us talk about sending a free book to one of Dr. Harley's books, that is, to you for having your email read on the show. So mbradio@marriagebuilders.com, include phone number and your mailing address, and we do nothing else with your mailing address other than send you a free book. Well, we're going to end with Alice's email, and it says, when can I trust him? She says, connecting emotionally requires trust. How can I connect when I don't trust my husband? I trust a four-legged chair to hold me up, but one-legged chair may be harder to trust even if you explain to me how it will work. My lack of trust has to do with unresolved conflicts, baggage, and downright unwillingness to trust him because he has failed me so many times. He's the one-legged chair. How can my trust in him ever be restored?
Yeah, my argument about trust is that it's earned. You can't trust people who have proven themselves to be untrustworthy. Now, there are some people that actually approach others as somebody that is untrustworthy before they've had any experience with that person. We call that a paranoid person.
Well, or just a little bit of the suspicious nature.
Right.
It doesn't have to go so far as being paranoid.
Right. But I mean, in general, it's an emotional disorder to approach people with mistrust. Most of us actually trust others more than we should without gaining evidence of whether or not they should be trusted. Most of us are trusting people until we have evidence to the contrary.
Okay, and that's what has happened to Alice.
Right.
She got evidence to the contrary. Right. And so now she doesn't trust. And she says, how can trust in him ever be restored?
Well, he's got to be the one to change. Basically, he's got to pretty much work on this whole business of what he's doing to cause her to feel like he is hurting her, doing things behind his back, lying to her, taking advantage of her, manipulating her, and she has plenty of evidence that this is what's going on, and the question, how can I ever trust him? It would be foolish for me to tell her to just do it. Just trust him. I know of counselors that have told people to do that. Their spouse has an affair, and they say you should forgive him and trust him. To me, that's the most stupid advice you could possibly give anybody, because you've already gotten the evidence that this guy is not trustworthy. Why go blindly ahead thinking that, well, things are likely to change without me having to do anything or encouraging the other person? Change is hard. Change is difficult. When a person has an affair, there's a lot of things that person is going to have to do that will require effort. And so in order to trust a person after they've had an affair, they have to demonstrate over a period of years, actually, that is a thing of the past, and they're never going to do that again.
Which I wish we had Alice's husband writing us saying, yeah. I have failed Alice, and I would like to restore her trust in me. What can I do, Dr. Harley? I mean, that's really where it begins. It begins with Alice's husband. Am I right?
Yeah, we'd have to work on honesty and openness. We'd have to work on the policy of joint agreement. We would have to work on being able to demonstrate to her that he cares about her in an extraordinary way, and that has to be done in little ways. I mean, things that happen every day have to be demonstrated to her that he finally is somebody who I can lean on, that I can depend on, because whenever he tells me that he's going to do something, it gets done. And he never lies to me. He never gives me false information. He's really turned the corner. If you have a couple of years of that, generally speaking, you will end up trusting that person.
Would they benefit from reading Love Busters or His Needs, Her Needs?
Love Busters,
okay.
Because I have a great chapter on dishonesty there.
We'll send that to Alice and her husband. Well, we're so glad you could join us for this hour. Our time is gone right now, but we will be back, and we trust you will be back as well. I'm Joyce Harley with Dr. Bill Harley, and this is Marriage Builders Radio. Building marriages to last a lifetime.